Welcome to Movie Oubliette, the film review podcast for movies that most people have mercifully forgotten.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Conrad, and in each episode, we drag a forsaken film out of the oubliette,
Discuss it and judge it to decide whether it should be set free
or whether it should be thrown back and consigned to oblivion forever. We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the movie oubliette. Welcome to episode 156 of Movie Oubliette, the tri-continental podcast for forgotten fantastical films with me, Conrad, watching too much Olympics in Cambridge, UK.
Yeah, and me, Dan. I was going to say the same thing. Engrossed in the Olympics down here in Melbourne, Australia.
Yes. How could we not be? We focus on forgotten fantasy, sci-fi, and horror films because we love getting lost in the wilderness, hostile possums, and ominous howls in the middle of the night.
Yes.
Hello, Dan.
It's my dream. I do love a good camping trip.
Yes, it's my absolute nightmare. So this episode should prove interesting. So you're watching the Olympics, Dan?
Yeah. I don't watch sport at all.
No, me neither.
Normally. But the Olympics and the Football World Cup, I tend to watch.
Yeah.
So any favorite events that you've watched so far?
Well, I always love the tennis.
Yeah. I always watch the sort of lesser events. So I watched the trampoline gymnastics, which was amazing. Just so much artistry. And also the UK one, well, the female event, Bryony Page. And it was a stellar performance.
It was, I love it. Yeah, lady from Dorset. She was great, wasn't she? 33 years old, and she trounced everybody.
Yeah, I know, because they're always so young in the gymnastics. A lot of teenagers, a lot of sort of young upstarts. But when you're that experienced, you can still win gold.
You can. I also end up watching the diving a lot, but I'm not sure that's just because of the artistry.
I watch the synchronized diving. It's really interesting. It's such a fascinating event.
Yeah, I do love it when somebody's got everything on the line and they fall off.
Yeah, belly flop.
Yeah.
All right, I guess we should move on to the mailbag. What have our listeners been saying?
Well, they've been getting sucked into our previous episodes, Dan. Damsel in the Dollhouse said, on Shallow Grave, so excited for your review. I saw this film many moons ago and absolutely loved it. It's such a fun, dark comedy with a truly horrible set of characters that I can't help but adore. My favourite scene has to be the splurging on toys montage, which convinced me that Ewan McGregor was going to end up being a movie star.
Ah, yes. I'm still baffled by the things they spend the money on.
Yeah, I know.
Surely you should buy cars, right? Not toys.
And lipstick. I don't know what's going on in that scene. Paul Anderson got in touch about Equilibrium. He said, I blinking love this film. It's so bombastic. The comparisons to The Matrix are a little unfair. While released a few years after it was being made around the same time and got caught up in distribution hell, Gunn Carter was, quote unquote, refined in the later Ultraviolet, according to the director, but it just looks more fun here and less CGI. It would have fallen dead if it did not have the acting chops at play, but as it is, it gets regular viewing from me. Glad it was set free.
Yeah, that's a good point about the acting chops. Yeah, it would have definitely disappeared if the acting was subpar.
Yeah, I think Christian sells it quite a lot. And of course we heard from Serge of Cold Crash Pictures. Hello, Serge.
Hello, Serge.
He said, I'm torn on Equilibrium. On the one hand, it's a deeply silly reactionary dystopia film that doesn't offer anything new besides 3 to 4 scenes of Gunn Carter. But it's also not like a bad version of what it's trying to be. Is that worth a recommendation? I don't rightly know, but even in high school I knew this was like a 5th grader's understanding of fascism, but I still don't think it's bad so much as not for me. In the end, I think I'm as torn as the final verdict of Movie Oubliette.
I don't know. It is very much a product of its time.
Yeah. But thanks for writing in, everybody. We always love hearing from you.
Yes, we do. All right, Conrad, let's move on to the movie for today.
It's going to be chosen by our special guest joining us today, distinguished film critic, co-host of the Horror Queers podcast, and my co-host on the YouTube reaction channel, The Queer Gaze. It's returning champion Joe Lipsett. Hello, sir.
Hey. Welcome back.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me back. And I hopefully have brought a film that you will enjoy.
Hope so. Have you been watching the Olympics?
I have, yes. It was actually very hard to just listen to the two of you talk about it because I wanted to chime in so badly.
What's your favorite event to watch?
I will confess that I do watch the diving for many of the same reasons I suspect Conrad does. But my husband is a big fan of the track and field, so we've been watching a lot of that in the back half as well. I don't know. I get so anxious when everything is on the line. Like, I can't watch hurdles because I'm terrified that someone is going to trip over them and then their, Olympic dream is just done in a split second. It's harrowing.
There's a lot on the line. Yeah, I was watching pole vaulting yesterday and it's just grueling.
Yeah.
The drama.
And meanwhile, the rest of us are just sitting on the couch eating snacks, right?
Yeah, barely able to bend down and pick up something off the bottom shelf in the supermarket.
Oh, I pulled something getting out of bed this morning.
Yeah. It's not good. So, would you like to fetch us a movie, Joe? I think you are qualified to go into the Oubliette.
Oh, yes, I'd love to. Okay. Just going to keep going down this road about 100 yards. Oh, wait. I think I recognize that tree marking. Wait, maybe I'm going in circles because I keep ending back at the same place. Oh, there's a dead sea cow. Oh God, I'm being attacked by birds and marsupials. Okay, wait, I think I've got the film. I'm running back.
Good, why don't you and Cricket go away and I'll stay home and bark at the birds?
That did not sound like fun.
No.
Yeah, speaking of harrowing, apparently a long weekend camping trip is far more deadly than I expected.
Yeah.
So, I think that hints towards what you've got for us. What film do we have to look forward to today?
Okay, I brought back A Long Weekend. This is an Australian film from 1978. It's an environmental thriller directed by Colin Eggleston and written by Everett DeRoche. It stars John Hargreaves and Bryony Behetz. And this film is interesting because not just the way that we're pronouncing Marcia, apparently in Australia, Dan, it's Marcia? Question mark?
I was surprised by that. I don't think I've heard that pronunciation before.
So yes, we've got our main couple, Peter and Marcia. They're a dysfunctional Australian couple who go camping for a long weekend in an effort to salvage their failing marriage. There's tension right from the start when Peter points a gun at Marcia and they bicker over bringing their dog Cricket. And then the bad behavior continues when Peter runs over a kangaroo on the highway. They also start a fire with a lit cigarette. They litter at will, and they shoot at pretty much anything that moves. And none of this seems to sit well with the local flora and fauna. When the couple kills a pregnant sea cow in the ocean, this is when nature begins to fight back. So this film is asking a lot of questions. Will Peter and Marcia patch up their differences over her recent, spoiler alert, abortion and their swinging open marriage? Will the pair manage to get it on, or will they both just read pornography all weekend? How many different creepy animal sounds can the production team put on a single soundtrack? And finally, will John Hargreaves' dick accidentally fall out of his incredibly loose and tiny white short shorts? Wow. Find out after the break.
Yes. And we are back to talk about Long Weekend an Australian psychological thriller film shot in 1977 and first shown in 1978. Dan, I'm presuming you did not see this in theatres when it was released.
Well, I mean, I wasn't born yet. I hadn't even heard of this movie until it was brought up by you, Joe. So, yeah, it's completely disappeared. I've never heard of anyone talking about this movie. Apparently, it did do fairly well in terms of the film festival circuit when it came out, but it didn't do well at the box office.
No. Unfortunately, you folks have the same historical, I guess, disregard for genre fare as we have in Canada, where we will make them for money, but then we don't like them as a populace, and then the rest of the world discovers it and we try to play catch up.
Yeah, I mean, it's often the case in New Zealand and Australia where it's almost like they don't appreciate the arts until the rest of the world appreciates their sort of output, and then they go, oh, so apparently we do something well. Oh, yes, we're supporting it now, but only if it does well overseas first.
Yeah, it feels very much like the British film industry, where genre was sort of looked down upon in favour of sort of heritage stuff like Merchant Ivory and Chariots of Fire, rather topically.
Sure.
Similar sort of story. I had never heard of it either, never caught it on TV, seen it being released by a cult DVD label or anything like that. So, yeah, when you mentioned it, Joe, I had no idea what you were talking about. So what's your history with it?
I honestly can't remember when I first watched this. I think it would have been in the late 2000s or early 2010s. I had a falling out period with horror where I then tried to get back into it in a big way. And it didn't hurt that the blockbusters were starting to shut down. So I just went and grabbed pretty much like supermarket sweep style everything off of the horror and sci-fi pile that I possibly could. And I've had a soft spot for exploitation films for a while. So this was one of those ones where I thought, okay, well, I've seen Turkey Shoot and I've seen Next of Kin, so maybe I'll check out one of this weird one. And it caught my eye in part because you think that this is going to be a rural horror film. Like there's so many hints that it's a city couple and they're going to get quote unquote savaged by people in the small town, or they're going to get hunted on the beach or something. And then the film basically just becomes Mother Nature hates you, and we go from there. And I thought it's so novel in that way.
Yeah, I didn't expect that at all. And once you kind of get the theme that, yes, humans are bad, nature's fighting back, then you realize, oh yeah, these people are awful to the environment.
Oh gosh.
Just littering all the time, throwing bottles, killing wildlife. It's awful stuff. And I feel like back in the 70s, that was just normal.
Right.
I feel like people just threw rubbish out the window all the time, and that was just normal behavior.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's abhorrent.
Yes.
Oh gosh, yeah, everything they do is horrifying now. Casually throwing a cigarette butt out of the window and it starts a fire and they drive off, running over a kangaroo. I think people would have been disturbed by that even then.
Yeah.
But it's just the sort of wanton, careless attitude. Like Peter is hacking at a tree with an axe at one point, and Marcia says to him, why are you doing that? And he says, why not?
Why not? What an answer.
He just randomly shoots his gun everywhere. He's shooting at empty glass beer bottles in the sea and just littering them with shards. And it's just such careless, thoughtless ownership of the land. I noticed in this group discussion of critics that was on my Blu-ray edition that I had, one of them made the connection to colonialism and just a sense that there's these white people just wandering around in a new land, treating it as though they own the place. And it's just the scene of their next domestic dispute.
Yeah, I did think of the two of you because I know that you had so much difficulty with the unlikable protagonists in Shallow Grave just a couple of episodes ago. And I thought, oh no, I brought this absolutely abhorrent couple. But I do admit, I find part of the film's fascination with, if we don't like this people, do we still invest in the film? Like, do we care if bad things happen to them, or do we relish it? And I honestly don't know if there's a right or wrong answer.
Yeah, I mean, I personally relish it because, it's exactly like Shallow Grave. You've got these horrible people, and they're both horrible. At first you think, oh, it's Peter. He's an asshole. He treats her, Marcia, terribly. But then you find out that she cheated on him with another man and had an abortion, and they're not great people to each other. There's no one person that's worse than the other. I feel like Marcia is quite horrible in the fact that she's not enjoying the trip. She's not enjoying the camping. She hates it. It's like idyllic. It's my dream to be camping on a secluded private beach. That's exactly what I want to be doing right now. And she's just dissatisfied by the complete like serenity of it all.
Yeah, there is that one part where she says, I can't believe you brought me to this ugly place. And I just thought, ma'am, have you taken a look around? This place is gorgeous.
I know. And she is horrible to the dog. She wants to leave the dog behind. They're like, we're going for 3 days. Just throw some food at the dog. He'll be fine. And then when they are trying to leave the beach because all this stuff has happened, she's like, leave the dog. It's fine. We don't need to bring the dog. It's like, come on, Marcia. Dog's important too. Come on, it's cricket.
Yeah, at one point she lies and says that the dog's dead and she's buried it.
Yeah.
She's so desperate to leave.
She's so desperate to leave, yeah. She just makes up a story and it's not even true. That sort of thing aside, Marsha's attitude towards camping did make her an identification figure for me, because I thought, yeah, I'm down with Marcia. This is not my idea of a good time. But I see what you mean about the unlikable characters. I think for my case, whereas Shallow Grave, I find it difficult to spend time with those three people because it sort of feels like it's supposed to be a Faustian bargain narrative where you care about the outcome, and I didn't. With this, I feel as though the characters are, well, they're an essential part of the piece, of course, but the main thing that compels you is the Twilight Zone-like oddness of the situation. And it is set up as very much a Twilight Zone supernatural situation from the very beginning, with them going in circles and seeing the same tree over and over again. And you know you're in that territory of if you go into the wilderness, it will warp time and space, very much in the way that it does in the Blair Witch Project and so many other stories like this. And that's the sort of thing that is, I find, really compelling. And there's also the fact that it is a beautiful looking film.
Yeah.
It's shot on Panavision using anamorphic lenses. It's 2.35 to 1. One of two films that was using the experimental Panaglide Steadicam.
Yes, yeah.
The other one was John Carpenter and Dean Cundy on Halloween in the same year. So it has a lot of really, really beautiful camera work. So I was watching and thinking the artistry of this is really drawing me in, even though the characters suck.
Yeah. I heard it was all filmed on location as well. I mean, the location is stunning. It's beautiful. Except for, I think, some shots in the car was filmed in a garage, I think.
Yes.
In a darkened garage with crew just running past with torches, flashlights to sort of give the impression of street lights, which is amazing.
Yeah. Poor man's process, I think they call it.
You do what you can. Yes. This is not a big budgeted film.
No, I do feel like it makes up for it with the sound.
Yes.
Like you mentioned, Joe, there is a lot of wildlife sounds. And me being in Australia, recognized all of it. So I've got hearing crows at one point. It's like, you're not going to get crows on a beach.
A Tasmanian devil.
Tasmanian devil, yes. It only lives in Tasmania. There's no way you would see one. And I think this movie is supposed to be set in Victoria, but I think it was filmed in New South Wales and near Bega.
Yeah.
But I'm not entirely sure of the setting. I think it's a fictional place that they talk about.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're not going to see a Tasmanian devil. All the other animals, you probably would, actually. Also, you mentioned kangaroo getting run over. That's very common occurrence, actually.
Very common.
They have signs everywhere, kangaroos crossing. Pretty much no one drives at dusk or at night in the country because of the prevalence of kangaroos on the road. It's very, very common.
Yeah. It reminded me of Talk to Me as well, which prominently features a kangaroo roadkill.
Yes, it does.
it has one of those things again that I really love, which is foreshadowing. There is a lot of foreshadowing in this movie.
So much.
So many things, like right after Marcia has had a shower and you've been watching her naked, you see Peter find a naked Barbie doll on the beach that is covered with mold. There is a scene where the spear gun that Peter has brought with him, I don't know, he's armed to the teeth, he's determined to kill everything. That goes off by accident and startles Marcia, which again is a bit of a clue. And you also have an eagle attacking Peter, and then later on an eagle attacks somebody else, and a similar thing happens to Peter as happens to the kangaroo earlier on. There's a lot of foreshadowing of pretty much everything in this movie.
Yeah, I felt very Hitchcockian. I know I say this for like every thriller we seem to do, but it really did. And a lot to do with the music. The music felt, from the get-go, felt unnerving. It felt like something bad is about to happen, even if it wasn't showing anything bad going on. It had a sort of sense of like voyeurism at the start as well. It's quite a long shot of Peter talking to some other girl, so I guess you assume that he's having an affair maybe. So it has this kind of feeling of they're being watched as well. When they're on the beach, there are a few shots where it looks, it's almost like Halloween type.
Yes.
Looking behind the reeds, behind the bushes at the couple on the beach.
And I mean, I know, Conrad, you mentioned that this is using the same technique that we'll see in Halloween, but I'm actually going to tie this back to a film from Canada, because we often forget that Black Christmas is very influential around the world. So the POV from the quote-unquote killer, as well as it's a little bit more influential than I think we give it credit for. So that would have come out 4 years earlier.
That's very true.
Right, yes.
Also had a very spooky soundtrack. I do love the music in this. It's by a composer called Michael Carlos, who didn't seem to generate a lot of credits after this, unfortunately.
No.
But it's a wonderful combination of 70s analog synthesizers, somewhere between a keyboard, piano, and a harpsichord, and strings, but just strings. It's not a full orchestra. I don't think there's any woodwinds either, or brass.
No.
It's just strings. And compositionally, it doesn't sound like Bernard Herrmann, but the choice of instruments, I think, is very inventive in the way that he often was.
Yeah. The synths were unexpected. They were used in a quite sort of acoustic kind of way. Like, they didn't sound too electronic, but there were times where it felt very electronic. But it's analog, so it has that warmth to it. It doesn't sound too obscure.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you even mentioned it, because I was racking my brain. I'm not an audiophile in the same way that the two of you are, so I was hoping you would tell me. I was watching this last night and thinking, is that a synthesizer? I would never have expected to have heard one in an Australian film from this time period.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there were moments as well where the synths kind of blended in with the sound design. There's some parts where you hear the dugong wailing, sort of these cries that you hear in the background, and then the synths kind of blend into it. You can't really tell the difference between synth and dugong at points, which is really great.
Yeah,
I think that was one of my favorite scenes, where Marcia is caught looking out at the ocean. Peter's off investigating, I think, the other campsite, and it's almost like a siren's call, where she gets lured into the water and he has to come and rescue her. And I think that's another contribution to that. What the hell is going on in these supernatural infused woods?
Yes.
And of course, the sea cow is of the family Sirenia, which is named after the siren of Greek mythology.
Okay.
The mermaids are sort of feminine sea creatures that would lure people to their doom in the waves.
There's not a huge amount of special effects or gore in this movie.
No.
It's much more to do with sound, to sort of unnerve you as a viewer, and just sort of kind of a visceral look to it as well. So towards the end, when they're trying to escape and they just can't escape this beach,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the location alone makes it super creepy.
Yeah, and apparently while they were filming, they just lucked out every single day. The weather was exactly the way they needed it to be.
Oh,
So the
wow.
beach would make itself look beautiful on the days when it was sort of earlier on scenes where things are fine, and then it would be dark and ominous and would cloud over and be spooky. For days when they needed it to be spooky, they were quite blessed. 4-week shoot, low budget, and the weather just worked out every day. Really strange.
Right. Wow.
Speaking of
wow.
supernatural.
Yeah.
Now, I do love how it has a sort of Edgar Allan Poe-like sense of doom hanging over it. Like the dugong, even after Peter has shot it, its carcass, they discover it on the beach,
Yeah.
but then it seems to be slowly advancing towards them because it's closer to the camp every time they go back to it.
Yeah.
Which is really spooky.
Love it. Yeah, I imagine that there's probably a fair contingent of people who watch this film and say, oh, it's just hokey. It's, animals attacking them unprompted. Ooh, scary. And I find it's the reverse. Like, I find this film deeply unnerving and weird and just kind of creepy.
Yeah, and I think it's because it isn't explicit gore. This isn't Razorback, oddly enough written by the same writer, Everett DeRoche,
Yeah.
which we've covered on this pod. It's not that. It's not Jaws.
No.
It's not...
Even though we do get a scene that's kind of like Jaws, where Peter's in the water.
We do, yeah. The sea cow is slowly advancing towards him under the water, but we don't quite know what it is. Interestingly enough, immediately after Marcia has enjoyed herself in the tent, it's a little bit more like The Birds, I would say. Again, another Hitchcock reference, where outsider comes to Cove. In that case, it's Tippi Hedren, of course. And this seems to create a hostile environment that needs to reject her and remove her. And then once she's dead, everything's fine and everything goes back to normal. So it sort of has that unexplained spooky aspect to it. And I do find The Birds weirdly unnerving in the same way as Long Weekend.
Yeah. So I wanted to pose a question. So is this beach cursed? Because they do find another set of campers. They find their vehicle, their van or whatever, is submerged in the water, and Peter goes and investigates, and there's a corpse in the back of that vehicle. So is this curse slowly just killing anyone that sets foot on it?
I think so.
It's like the beach from old, only it's with animals.
Yeah.
Yes. Not being used for drug testing. Sorry, spoilers. Yeah, I think you do get the sense that nature is sort of biting back at anybody, although the other family seem more like a side issue. It's not really very well developed as to who they were and why this is happening to them. I mean, I'm not sure that the idea that any family that steps foot there is going to suffer the same fate really works in the film's favor, because otherwise the film seems very much focused on the crimes against nature that Peter and Marcia have committed. And that makes me wonder, is this movie, and I was surprised that nobody in the commentary or in the discussion that I read mentioned this.
Talk about the abortion, talk about it.
It feels like it could be a very conservative film reacting against abortion as an unnatural act.
Yeah. Because Dan, when you mentioned earlier that Marcia is just as bad as Peter, I was inclined to agree with you initially, because she is grating, she's shrill, she's a harpy, and you just think, oh, this relationship is awful. I don't even know why they're together. And then you realize, of course, the whole point of the weekend is for them to try to find their way back together. But she wasn't committing adultery. She wasn't engaging in infidelity. They had discussions about opening up their marriage. So he's sleeping with the female partner. She's sleeping with the male partner. She got pregnant. We don't actually know who was the father, but then she has the abortion. And it seems like she does it without consulting Peter. So he's very upset.
Right.
But then, you can read into that the animal attacks being, well, they're also awful people who disregard or disrespect nature. But we also learned that the sea cow that they kill was a mother or it was pregnant. And that's, I think, part of the reason why it keeps coming back is because the issue with the abortion keeps coming back. So again, that's why I also drew a comparison to Black Christmas earlier, because that film is implicitly about abortion and a woman's right to choose. And she's got this horrible boyfriend named Peter.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah, Keir Dullea.
Yeah, I completely missed that about their marriage opening up and them agreeing to see other people. I had no idea. I thought she did cheat on him.
Well, it's a throwaway line, so you'd be forgiven for missing it. And you're right, Conrad, when you read reviews, when you listen to things about the film, like we casually address it. And of course, there's the moment in the film where she screams at him, I didn't want to have an abortion. But I think apart from that, like if you're not looking for it, if it's not your primary focus, it is actually very easy to overlook.
Which is bizarre because there's so much imagery. I mean, okay, it's nature, so you're going to draw these comparisons anyway.
Yeah.
But you have Marcia and the egg.
Oh, yeah.
You couldn't get a stronger symbol of fertility than an egg, which she smashes against a tree trunk and blood goes everywhere. And Peter just keeps killing mothers over and over again. He shoots wildly into nature, and then you next see a dead duck surrounded by
orphan chicks.
Orphaned chicks, crying out for its mother, which is terrible. He kills the sea cow, which we later learn was pregnant. He's just killing mothers over and over again in the movie, and then finally...
And then he'll kill her.
Kills Marcia,
But it's interesting, right? Because Peter is a certain kind of monster, but it's not as though he hates all women. It's not as though he hates all animals, because you're right, Dan, he does love Cricket.
He does.
Some might say he even loves Cricket the dog more than he loves his wife.
Yes.
So it's not black and white, which I do like, because I feel like the film exists in this world of supernatural murkiness. It's a big gray area.
Yeah. Once you realize it's kind of ecological horror, it's nature versus humans, it does feel very like hating on human nature and humans killing each other. We're essentially killing the environment, killing each other. We're causing our own demise. When they switch on the radio at one point, there's a report on, I think it's a nuclear testing or something, or some sort of atomic explosion. Yeah. So it's got its views on nuclear testing and nuclear weapons, that sort of thing. So it does have a very clear theme.
Yeah. If you listen to the radio throughout, it's just one disaster after another. It talks about white cockatoos attacking houses. There's even, I think, a report on flying saucers on the radio in the background. At one point, there's a sense that the world is really on the brink.
But I think the flying saucer piece also plays into, it's not just that there's weird things happening, but I think it's meant to cue us a little bit like the foreshadowing, Conrad, that we're stepping into some weird events, right? Like things may not be as they seem because there's a supernatural component.
Yeah. I love how the relationship and the backstory between the couple, it's a beautiful piece of writing from Everett DeRoche because it unfolds one hint at a time. First of all, you get a sense that possibly somebody's been unfaithful because there's a snotty remark about Marcia being an expert on hotel rooms. Later on, she makes some reference to what would you have done if I died? Did she have a near-death experience? What is this about?
We just keep teasing it and teasing it.
Yeah, it's just one little drop after another until finally you find out that she has had an abortion and that she's been in therapy for this, and that as a result of this or a whole host of other issues, the couple haven't been able to be physically intimate with each other. And then later you get that extra layer of, because on the commentary track, the cinematographer and the producer are saying Peter forced Marcia to have an abortion, and that's not true. Or maybe she thinks that it feels true to her in a way that she had no other choice because of the way that he was behaving.
Right.
But he accuses her of lashing out at the only thing that she could, which was the unborn child. So it's what I like about it, it isn't clear cut. It's two people who have very different truths, but universally they are not very pleasant. people.
Yeah. And I love this as fodder for horror, right? Like, I think one of the other soft comparisons you could make for this film is the character relationship in The Strangers, the Brian Bertino original, where it's two people who are on the cusp of breaking up, or they're really going through it relationship wise, who then find themselves caught in something much larger beyond their control. And their situation exacerbates the supernatural or the threatening elements.
Yeah, right. I haven't seen that movie.
Oh, wow, Dan. Okay, you're going to have a great experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now it's time for Random Trivia.
So, Dan, what fascinating piece of trivia did you dig up at the beach today?
Yes. I found a dugong. So the dugong is often, as you said, Joe, referred to as a sea cow. It's one of 4 species of Sirenia, which include 3 species of manatee. Its habitat spans 40 countries and territories throughout the Indo-West Pacific, but its main stronghold is the northern waters of Australia. Did you know dugongs are the only herbivorous mammal to have become completely aquatic and are not closely related to any other marine mammal, but instead their closest relative is the elephant, which is, very surprising. But yeah, they don't look like the dugong in the movie, though. They're not dark coloured. They're not black. They're normally quite sort of creamy white coloured. And I have seen one as well. At the Sydney Aquarium, there is a dugong. And they feed it cos lettuce because it resembles seagrass. And it's just a little bit easier to farm, I guess.
Right.
And that's our trivia.
Yes, that's our trivia. Did you know there is a remake of Long Weekend called Nature's Grave, 2008 movie directed by Jamie Blanks, the same director as Urban Legend and Valentine, which I can't imagine that.
Can I tell you that it's a near shot-for-shot remake?
Is it?
Really?
Yeah. So you've essentially nearly already seen it. It's about 10 minutes shorter. I watched the beginning and the end, so I can't vouch for whether there's a lot different in the middle. But he basically said he wanted to remake the same film. And the substantial addition is that at the end of the film, there's a black and white montage of the 2 main characters on their wedding day, which I think is interesting. It doesn't quite work for me because it tries to put a soft romantic side to their relationship. Like, well, here's them during happier times. And I just thought, no, it's not earned. It feels incongruous to the rest of the film.
Yeah.
Right. But is it a good film from what you could gather?
I will say that the performances are probably a little bit more professional. So we do have Jim Caviezel in the Peter role, and the actress who plays Marcia isn't quite so histrionic when she's yelling at him. So everything just feels a little bit more rounded down.
Yeah.
But we're still getting absolutely gorgeous shots of Australian outback and bush and so on. So
So it is still an Australian film, I guess, because Jamie Blanks is an Australian.
he is actually.
Is he?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I had no idea. Yeah, completely wrong there.
Yeah, it's I would say if you've seen one, you've basically seen the other, but I do prefer the original because I'm a bit of a purist that way.
What other movies are similar to this? I mean, I can think of like a lot of creature features where you've got one animal like piranha or crawl or even Godzilla and the birds, Hitchcock's birds, but nothing where like all the animals and all the flora and fauna are attacking them.
Yeah, the only one I could think of, it doesn't involve any animals from what I remember, but there is M. Night Shyamalan's The Happening. Which is where
Yes.
not a good comparison because that movie is just very, very silly.
It's quite bad, yeah. I like the start of that movie, though. I think the start really works and draws you in, but then it just falls off after the first, 10, 15 minutes.
I will say, if you watch it as a comedy, like a straightforward comedy, it plays much better.
Yeah, I can see that.
I like to think of it as being strangely subversive. Like most disaster movies like this focus on protagonists that are capable and really smart and resourceful.
Yeah.
Whereas Zooey Deschanel and
Mark Wahlberg.
Mark Wahlberg are, just the other guys. These are the stupid people.
Oh, no.
But I don't think it was intended that way.
No.
No.
Don't think so.
No, I couldn't think of anything similar either, in the sense that it's everything. Usually it's a swarm of bees, it's the birds, it's an alligator. Usually we focus on one boogeyman at the same time, which is, I think, why this one feels so much more like a Twilight Zone episode, because it's everything is out to get them.
Everything.
Yeah, that's true.
Which also just confirms to me that the minute that they turn off the highway, in the best classic horror kind of sense, they were never getting out of there. They were horrible people, but they were always going to die.
Yeah.
I like that Peter at one point sings the Teddy Bear's Picnic, which is sort of a cautionary tale, slightly creepy song, childhood song, about going out into the wilderness and getting a big surprise. And Peter literally stumbles upon a Teddy Bear's Picnic later on in the movie. Which has been assembled by the family that's now perished as well.
Yeah, I've seen speculation that the other campers are the people that he nearly runs into on the highway when he's distracted and lighting his cigarettes.
Oh, yeah. It could well be, because everything comes back. It's like the guy that runs him over at the end of the movie is in the bar at the beginning.
Yeah.
It all ties together. Everything is neatly tied up in a nice little circular bow. Which I love.
Yeah, it has been written very well. I mean, Everett de Roche, he's written some fantastic movies. I mean, Razorback, for one thing. And Frog Dreaming, I don't know whether it's a good movie, but it seems to come up a lot. I think one of our patrons has recommended it. But yeah, he also did Patrick and another movie called Harlequin, which is supposed to be quite good. So
if you folks are ever looking for another sort of gently influenced by American culture, but very distinctly Australian, I would highly encourage you to check out Road Games, which is basically Australian Duel.
yes.
With Jamie Lee Curtis and Stacey Keach.
Yes.
I would love to do that.
It's good times. That movie is 5 different intersections of genre.
It's good fun. Yeah, I'd like to do Link, another one of Everett de Roche's films as well. I've never seen it. It's Elizabeth Shue and a homicidal primate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You two do love a homicidal primate.
Well, we've done one this year, so it couldn't be this year, but I would like to go back to it. Everett does seem to have written a lot of films that are in the oubliette for us.
Yeah, whereas Colin Eggleston hasn't really done that many other movies. Well, not good ones anyway. I hear Sky Pirates is not good.
I think he had a pretty bad experience. Like, when you read the details, he was very disappointed that this film didn't financially perform, or it wasn't acknowledged by Australians. So I think he kind of went away and licked his wounds for a while.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Although the film was very successful, as you say, down on the festival circuit, and it did win some awards, like at Stiges, is that how it's pronounced, in Spain?
Sure.
Yeah, John Hargreaves won Best Actor, and he was up against some pretty heavyweight actors.
Wow.
in that.
I do think that both of the respective lead performances in this movie are great. Like, they're not always easy to watch in terms of characterizations, but in terms of performance, I think that they're both absolutely selling this.
Yeah. And I haven't really seen them in anything else. John Hargreaves, the only movie I can even recognize he's in is Malcolm, which is like a Melbourne filmed movie from the 80s. And Bryony Behetz is in 20 episodes of Neighbours and 26 episodes of The Saddle Club, which are very Australian, but I haven't seen.
Yeah, John Hargreaves, who was so good in this movie, unfortunately, he was not with us as long as he could have been. He was a gay actor, and he died of complications related to AIDS in 1996.
Oh, wow.
So we lost him quite young.
Yeah.
And he was buried with his Sitges. I can't pronounce this award.
I think Stidges.
Yeah, he was buried with his award because he was very, very proud of it and this movie.
Oh, wow.
And he should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. You should.
Coming to you live from the movie Oubliette Theatre, it's the prestigious Mobley Awards.
Hello, it's that special time of the podcast, the Mobley Awards, where we nominate our favourite campfire warming parts of the film in a number of harpoon impaling categories.
Best quote.
So I'll admit that this film is a little bit light on quotability, but I did quite enjoy Marcia's retort to Peter in their car when she says, "You self-indulgent maggot. You drag me to this awful, ugly place and poke your head out of your $2,000 shell like a tortoise and call it reality. You're not Tarzan, and I'm certainly not Jane by a long shot."
Yes. Love it.
It's marvelous, isn't it? Yeah.
Favourite quote for you, Conrad?
My favourite quote was one that I felt as though I was being targeted by this one. It's from Marcia. I was sat there writing down Marcia and the egg and all of these mothers being killed. And at one point, Marcia, in an argument with Peter, shouts, "Oh, spare me the grotty symbolism." She can see me writing my notes.
Best hair or costume?
My favourite costume in this is a splendid outfit that Marcia decides to go camping in. It's a light blue jumpsuit with a green mottled chiffon blouse underneath it, with huge 70s lapels and bell-bottom sleeves. It's hideous. It's one of the things that really dates the movie.
And it's so impractical. It's not something that you should be wearing. I mean, obviously, it's telling us a lot about the character and how she's a city girl. She's not ready for the beach or the bush. But also, I just can't stop thinking about how hot she would be because we keep... Like, we're suntanning in this film, so clearly it's summer in Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those things have got to be polyester.
Oh, yes.
Hair and costume, Joe?
So I did mention Peter's shorts, but I think for me, the most iconic look in this film is the fact that we sport matching baby blue Adidas track jackets.
Yes.
And then, of course, the way that we distinguish them between the two characters is after Peter has been attacked by an eagle, you can see all of the scratch marks on them.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, that's very true. His and hers.
It's verging on sort of like brand sponsorship at this point, right?
Yeah.
Most 70s moment.
I was going to say wife swapping. Seem to be, I don't know, something I think about as being associated with the 70s and Ice Storm from Ang Lee. You know, I just bet that fondue was involved in some way.
Right.
Yes. Key parties and fondue, right? So I have two. One is an underwater attack sequence because this film comes out 3 years after Jaws, which is the film that invents the blockbuster.
Yes.
So it really does feel like we're just recreating a segment from Jaws. But I think also the front and center focus on abortion, right? We're in the middle of the women's liberation movement, as well as the height of sort of sexual proclivity and freedom. So the fact that we're screaming the word abortion in this movie is very 70s to me.
Yes.
Very true. Very true. What about you, Dan?
All right, 70s for me. It's I feel like this is much more trivial. It's everything is orange and yellow. I don't know what it's about the 70s, but all of the camping equipment, the tent, it's all orange and yellow, and it's not a color that is chosen now.
No.
And brown. It was very much that end of the spectrum that decade. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Favorite scene?
So this was hard to narrow down because so much of the film kind of flows together, but I am going to pick the quote-unquote emotional climax for Peter where he gets trapped in the dark by himself. So even Cricket abandons him, and then all of a sudden, this masculine man who has been so imposing the entire film, so in charge, loses his shit as he jumps at every little sound. And I think it's great in terms of where the character has gone over the course of the film, but also I just think it's a really unnerving scene.
Yeah. Yeah. And it ends with him shooting the harpoon because he hears a sound.
Yes.
But they don't show what happens until the next day, which I love. I love the sort of
So good.
prolonged reveal.
Yeah, that's actually my favorite scene, and it's just a single shot. It's just that tracking shot from this guy who just looks like
hell.
He's spent. Yeah, he's been through everything and seen it all. He's got nothing left, and the camera just tracks along. And there's Marcia. She finally got the spear gun after all.
Yeah. I love the driving scenes when they're trying to get to the beach because it's just the location of this really dense sort of thicket of it looks like dead trees almost, and it's just spooky, lit up by the headlights at the front of the car, but also the backlights at the rear of the car. It's all red, so it just looks creepy as.
Most cliche moment.
For cliche, I had romantic rolling. I don't know why couples need to roll down natural features together. It seems to be a thing. So in this case, it's Peter and Marcia down some sand dunes.
Yeah, sandy.
I think the Princess Bride has the most extreme version where they just tumble head over heels down a hill for about 5 minutes, screaming declarations of love at each other. But romantic rolling is mine.
Yes. How about you, Joe?
Mine is the Chekhov's harpoon. If you're going to shoot it once, you got to shoot it twice, and you got to shoot it into a person.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very true. Yeah, there's a lot of foreshadowing on that one.
Yeah.
Even up to the first time that Peter sees Marcia in this, right? He's scoping her out through the literal scope, and you think, is he preparing to shoot her? Lo and behold, he does.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
Best special effect.
I really liked the touch of the bloody tire marks left by the truck that drags.
Yeah.
Obviously, because what I particularly like is there are gaps. It's not like a solid trail. There are gaps in it. So obviously Peter's blood only got on part of the tire.
Oh, right. Yes.
It's nasty.
Joe, special effect?
So this film doesn't really have a ton, I think, as you noted, Dan. But I will say I don't think it's a real animal that they shot up in the water. So I'm going to go with the sea cow. I think it looks weird and creepy, particularly for people who are not familiar with it. But I have to assume that they made that, as you said, Conrad, out of something. And I think it looks unnatural.
Yeah, it does. It looks quite alien. I don't know. For someone that has seen a dugong, it doesn't look like a dugong.
It doesn't look right.
Yeah,
right?
it looks more like a seal. I didn't actually know what it was when I first saw it, but, until they pointed it out. But yeah, it does work. And the part where he shoots it and it's kind of bursting with blood is it's weird.
Yeah.
Favorite sound effect.
So I think with mine, I'm going to go with that wailing sound that we've got for, I think it's meant to be the sea cow's like offspring, the kind of mournful call. I don't know. It's very eerie and evocative.
Yeah, I was going to pick that as well. And it changes as well. It kind of morphs over time and it morphs into this, sort of the synth score at one point. But sometimes it sounds like quite human and sometimes it doesn't. It's really interesting.
To the fact that in the film, we actually say it sounds like a baby.
Yeah, that's right.
Mine is still dugong related. It is the sound of it slowly dragging its way towards him.
Yes.
At night, in the dark. You can't see it. You can just hear it. And it's not like an overly dramatic sound. It's just very creepy and very determined. It's coming.
It's full Tales from the Crypt, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. It really is.
Most funniest moment.
So I will have to admit that I don't think either the eagle or the possum attacks are entirely convincing.
Yeah.
And if these are puppets, I would love it because they just give me a bit of a giggle.
Yeah.
I think they did the best they could. I think it's a marvel in terms of its editing, which is by a man named Brian Kavanagh. But yeah. they didn't have a lot of special effects there, I don't think.
Yeah.
My favourite funny moment was another exchange between our good friends Marcia and Peter. And it's actually a warm moment because not all of the movie is them bickering at each other. Sometimes you do have some warmth, which again makes it much more of a complex and nuanced movie than it would otherwise be. And they're just sort of kidding with each other. He's talking about his mother, and Marcia says, "You should have married your mother." And Peter replies, "You've got better tits."
Yep. And we see them, and they are quite good.
Yeah. Yep, and that's the director's girlfriend.
Right.
Yeah. But I guess he wasn't too worried about her being intimate on screen with John Hargreaves, given that he had no sexual interest
There you
in
go.
her whatsoever.
And that's our Mooblies.
And that's our Mooblies.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Sandy King Carpenter, producer of movies like They Live, Prince of Darkness, In the Mouth of Madness, and you're listening to Movie Oubliette.
Yes, it's final verdict time. Should the 1978 Australian ecological horror film Long Weekend be let loose from its cage and be celebrated by all? Or should it be shot multiple times with a rifle and let rot in a shallow, sandy grave, back down in the darkness of the oubliette, lost forever? Joe, our guest for today, you have presented us with Long Weekend. What do you think? Should people watch this?
Well, I brought this to you, and I don't come to friends without a gift that I would enjoy receiving myself. So I would absolutely vote to release this film. I think it's a marvel, and it's a quiet gem. Like, the two of you hadn't really heard or seen of it, and I think a lot of other people are going to discover this for the first time. And I just think, yeah, it's quite a solid little thriller, and there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, definitely.
I was surprised by this movie. I had no sort of impressions of what it was supposed to be. At the start, it makes it look like, yes, it's going to be like a Wrong Turn type movie where the locals have their way with the city folk. But it's not. And there's some really strong themes about humans kind of suck, you know. Nature's going to win at the end. And I think just the relationship between the two characters alone, and the fact that it's pretty much just two characters for the entire movie, it's pretty impressive and complex in terms of how their dynamic and how the story unfolds. It was a pleasant surprise. I would definitely recommend this.
Yeah, and I would third that, even though I'm not going to be the first person to volunteer for a long weekend camping, but I really enjoyed this for all the reasons that you've said. It's a very dense allegorical work, despite the slapback from Marcia about the grotty symbolism. It's beautifully shot on Panavision anamorphic lenses and experimental Panaglide work. The score is really interesting with the analog synths and the stark string compositions. It's sort of mournful and strange and unnerving, and very much like a Twilight Zone episode, and a two-hander between two fascinating characters that I hate much, like Shallow Grave. But in this case, I was, if not invested in them personally, but I was invested in finding out exactly what happened to them, and the fact that it all tied up with all the foreshadowing at the beginning of the movie, and it has so many themes knocking around in there that are fascinating to think about. Yeah, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was an amazing little gem of a movie.
Yeah. I have to say, if you are looking for a sort of more slasher gore-filled movie, it's not that. It's quite slow. It's much more of a thriller.
Yes.
And you don't really see a lot as well.
No.
So it's not that type of movie.
No. It reminds me a lot of the New Zealand movie that we watched, The Quiet Earth.
Oh, yeah.
You know, a small character study that's, you know, in a strange but intellectually compelling situation. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you are looking for something a little bit more exciting, I mean, obviously most creature features will do this, but there's another one with a couple who are kind of going through it in their personal life who then have to face the elements. It's a Canadian film called Backcountry, where the couple has to face down against a bear.
Ah, right.
Ooh. Well, we will definitely recommend it. It sounds like, but what did our patrons think, Dan? Can't wait to find out. Hello, Hal.
Yes, Conrad.
Could we have the patrons vote, please?
It's official. They hate it. They want to throw it back.
Oh, wow.
It's terrible. How dare they?
Wow. Yeah, it was unanimous among our patrons. Eddie Coulter said this was a hard one to determine what my vote would be. Long Weekend is an interesting film. However, the couple is so unlikable and unsympathetic that I found the rewatch to be painful to sit through. I hate seeing animals get hurt in movies, so animal attack movies are my least favorite genre, so that doesn't help my enjoyment of the film either. Back to the Oubliette it goes. Jasmine said watching Long Weekend was the inverse of watching the cartoon series Captain Planet and the Planeteers. Even though I feel strongly for the environment, I would jeer at the goody-goody blue superhero and pretentious teenagers of the title, all the while refusing to shout, "Go Planet," and at the same time rooting for the villains because they had colourful personalities and were funny.
Right.
However, I felt guilty doing so because they were polluting the planet. In Long Weekend, the only characters are the villains, who were not colourful or funny, doing jeer-worthy planet-polluting acts, but I still felt guilty rooting for nature, the hero of the film, when it finally brought justice in the end. I guess I will shamefully yell, "Go Planet," and also yell, "Go throw this movie back in the oubliette."
Wow.
And Shazilla said, "Okay, who made us watch this, Drek?"
That would be me. Sorry.
Did you guys lose a bet? Instead of ranting about how much I disliked Long Weekend, I'll tell you 3 things I liked. It had boobs, that tosser finally got killed, and it ended. I do have some questions, though. Do they not have NRA safety classes down under? Or did that wanker just skip them? He broke every gun safety rule there is.
Yes, yeah.
Well, he's an asshole, of course.
Yeah, I don't think he knows how to use a gun any more than he knows how to use any of that camping equipment. But yeah, you do not practice targeting your gun by pointing it at another human being.
No.
Lovely to hear from more of our patrons as usual, and lovely to see them all united, even with Jasmine, so she's not the odd one out this time.
Yeah.
But sorry, we enjoyed it.
Yes, we did. We did.
So we're setting it free.
All right. Goodbye.
Off you go, Long Weekend.
Here, Duncan, come on, cricket, let's win with the 2 guns. Goodbye.
So thanks, Joe, so much for bringing this gem of a movie for us to discover together. Where can our listeners find you and find more exciting films that you've discovered?
Yes, well, I can't imagine I'll be picking up any new fans from your patrons, but if anyone else liked the movie, you can follow me at Bee Stole My Remote on most socials. And obviously new episodes of Horror Queers come out every Wednesday, and then I've got about 10 other ones if you like hearing my voice, and it's easiest just to keep track of me on socials because that's where you'll find all of them.
Yes.
Do you have any exciting episodes of the Horror Quiz coming up that we should look out for?
Well, I may have one with a special guest from this here podcast coming out. Yeah, so we're going to be checking it out quite... Well, I guess we're not going to call it campy, are we, Conrad? Because the director himself would prefer that we not, but we are going to be discussing Paul Morrissey's Blood for Dracula with Udo Kier.
And of course, Joe and Conrad, you have your YouTube series as well.
Yes, if you head on over to YouTube and look for The Queer Gaze, you can watch Joe and I reacting to queer movies from every country and every decade.
Yeah,
Indeed.
every country.
As many as we could squeeze into the 6 episodes that we managed to get edited.
Yeah, but we did do an Australian movie if you want to check that out.
Yes. And if you want to keep up to date with Movie Oubliette, you can follow us on all social platforms as Movie Oubliette, and you can email us at movie.oubliette@gmail.com.
Yes, and if you'd like to support the show and vote down the movie, then head on over to Patreon, where for as little as $1 you can get access to extended portions of the show and nominate films to feature in future episodes. For $5 you get to vote against us in a bid to get rid of the movie and get access to our exclusive monthly minisodes. And for $10 you can be an executive producer and get rewarded with a mention at the end of every episode, like Chazilla, Eddie Coulter, Isaac Sutton, Dr. Doggy Surge, iconographer Ryan A. Potter, and new for this episode, Evan Goodchild.
Hey, nice. Thanks, Evan. Yeah. Our latest minisode, we talked about Hudson Hawk.
We did, yes. That was good fun.
Yeah, it was. We've got merchandise on Redbubble and a YouTube channel as well. And if you haven't rated and reviewed us already, please do. It does help us out a lot.
It does.
All right, Conrad, what's up for next episode? What's the film?
Well, we are heading over to the other side of the world for an American horror comedy film made in 1991. The People Under the Stairs.
Ooh, yes. I've been wanting to check this out for so long. I still haven't watched it. I'm looking forward to it.
It's a good one.
Yeah. Wes Craven. Should be fun.
All right, that's it for another episode. Joe, thank you again for joining us on this one and discussing Long Weekend.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye.
We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the movie Oubliette.
$2,000 worth of camping gear. For that, we could have had a VIP suite at the Southern Cross.